I hugged my husband at the door and I knew that scent, it stopped my whole world. Let me explain something about perfume. I have a very sharp nose. Always have. My mother used to joke that I should have been a sommelier or maybe a perfumer because I can smell things other people don't even notice. I can walk into a room and tell you if someone was recently there. I can smell rain 40 minutes before it comes. And I truly know, bone deep, every fragrance that enters my house. So, when Marcus walked through our front door on a Thursday evening in November, with that loose, easy smile he always wore when he thought everything was fine, and I stepped into his arms the way I had 10,000 times before, and I pressed my face into that warm space between his jaw and his shoulder, I caught it instantly. Chloé Nomade, the Eau de Parfum Intense, in the amber bottle with the gold cap. I know that fragrance because I selected it myself. I spent 45 minutes at the Nordstrom counter in October of the previous year, testing strips, reading notes, asking the sales associate questions. I wanted something sophisticated, but not cold. Something feminine, but with backbone. Something that suited a woman who was quietly confident and didn't need to announce herself. I bought it for my sister Diane, her birthday present. I stood in Marcus's arms with my face against his neck, and I did not move. I let him pat my back. I let him say, "Hey babe, long day." I let him think everything was normal. And in my head, everything was moving very fast and very slow at the same time, the way they say time works in a car accident right before impact. I had been married to Marcus Ellery for 9 years. We met when I was 27 and he was 32 at a fundraiser for a children's literacy nonprofit that a mutual friend had dragged us both to. He was tall, quietly funny, the kind of man who listened when you talked instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. I thought that was rare. I thought that meant something about his character. We got married 2 years later, in a ceremony in Asheville, North Carolina, on a late September weekend when the leaves were just starting to turn. My sister Diane was my maid of honor. She cried through the whole ceremony. I thought it was because she loved me. I thought that was what those tears meant. We had a good life. Genuinely. That's the part that people don't understand when you try to explain it later. It wasn't obviously bad. Marcus worked in commercial real estate. I was a pediatric occupational therapist, which means I spent my days helping small children learn to hold pencils and button their shirts and tolerate the feeling of socks, which is both exhausting and quietly wonderful. We owned a house in Raleigh. We had a dog named Franklin. We took one real trip every year and one long weekend somewhere in the fall. We were trying, in the quiet background way that married couples do, to get pregnant. We'd been trying for 14 months. I had started tracking everything: temperatures, cycles, supplements, the whole architecture of hope that fertility planning becomes. And Marcus was supportive, attentive. He came to the appointments. He held my hand through 2 early losses that we didn't tell anyone about because I wasn't ready to explain them. He held my hand, and then he went and smelled like my sister's perfume. The thing about Diane is that she lived 20 minutes from us. She and I were close, or I thought we were close. She was 2 years younger than me, 34 at the time, and she'd never been in a long-term relationship that lasted more than 2 years. She always said she was particular. She said she was waiting for someone who matched her energy. I defended her to our mother, who worried. I told our mother that Diane was independent and self-assured and that not every woman needed a permanent partner to be complete. I believed that. I said it with conviction. I was, apparently, an idiot. After Marcus and I separated and the full story came out, I learned that it had been going on for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. That means it started 8 months after I bought her that perfume. I don't know if she wore it to see him on purpose. I don't know if that was some kind of sick joke between them, or if she was just careless, or if she simply forgot that I was the one who gave it to her. I have spent more time than I should admit turning that detail over in my mind, But I'm getting ahead of myself. I let go of Marcus in the hallway. I smiled at him. I asked him if he was hungry. I went into the kitchen and I stood at the counter and I breathed very carefully for about 30 seconds. Then I opened the refrigerator and took out the leftover pasta and I heated it up and I set it in front of him at the kitchen table and I sat across from him and I watched him eat and I kept my face completely still. He told me about his day, a deal that was close to closing, traffic on I-40, something a coworker said that was mildly irritating. I nodded. I asked small questions. I was so calm that I frightened myself. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay in the dark for 3 hours and I let myself feel it. Not the rage, that came later. First, it was this cold, spreading dread, because I knew what I had smelled, and I knew that the only rational explanation was the one I did not want to be true. I thought about alternative explanations the way you do when your mind is trying to protect you. Maybe Diane had hugged him somewhere. Maybe they'd been near each other earlier. Maybe there was some other explanation I wasn't thinking of. But I knew. I just knew. My nose had never been wrong. I started paying attention. That's the thing about being a person who notices things. Once you start looking, you cannot stop seeing. I checked the small things first. Marcus's phone had always been face up on the counter when he was home. Now it was face down. He had started muting his notifications and flipping the phone over when I walked into a room. He said his new phone settings were bothering him. He laughed when he said it. I didn't push. I stored it. I noticed that he had started going to the gym on Sunday mornings, which he had never done before. He said he was trying to get ahead of his cholesterol. He made a joke about getting old. I agreed and made no other comment. I noticed that he began picking up dry cleaning on his way home on certain Thursdays, which was convenient since the cleaner was near his office, but also meant he stopped coming straight home on those days. I started checking our credit card statements. Not the joint account, the one in both our names that we used for household expenses. His personal card. He kept his statements in a folder in the home office, and I had always had access. He didn't think to change that. In 6 weeks of statements, I found 4 charges to the Umstead Hotel and Spa in Cary. The Umstead is not cheap. Dinner for 2 at their restaurant runs $300 without wine. A weekend room is over $500 a night. I looked up the dates. Every one of them was either a Thursday or the Sunday when he was at the gym. I sat in the parking lot of a grocery store for 45 minutes after I found those statements. I remember a woman loading bags into a minivan next to me and glancing over and then glancing away quickly, probably because my face was doing something she didn't want to get involved in. I went home. I put dinner on the table. I smiled at my husband. And then I called my best friend from college, Renata, who is an attorney but not a divorce attorney, and I told her what I knew. She listened to everything, and then she said, "Vivienne, don't say a word to anyone until you have a lawyer." She was the first person I told, the only person for 2 months. The lawyer she referred me to was a woman named Catherine Park. Small firm, fierce reputation, not cheap. I met her at her office on a Tuesday afternoon when I had told Marcus I had a continuing education seminar. I laid out everything I had, and Catherine looked at me across her desk and said, "You've already done half my job." She explained North Carolina's equitable distribution laws, and she explained what documentation would be most useful, and she explained exactly how to behave between now and the moment we filed. "You act normal," she said. "You do not confront. You do not let him know you're aware. You document everything and you wait." I was good at that. I had been practicing for 2 months already, but I still hadn't confirmed Diane. That came on a Sunday in February. Marcus left for the gym. I drove past our gym on the way to get coffee. He wasn't there, no surprise. And then, on an impulse I cannot fully explain, I drove to Diane's apartment. Her car was in the lot. I parked across the street. I sat with my coffee going cold in my hand. 40 minutes later, Marcus's car pulled out of the complex. I watched his taillights disappear. I sat very still. Then I put the car in drive and I went home and I changed the sheets because I needed something physical to do with my hands, and I folded everything into neat squares and I put it all away. I did not go to Diane's apartment. I did not call her. I did not text. I put my phone on the charger and I went for a run in the cold February air, and I ran until my lungs burned and I couldn't feel my face, and the only thought in my head was, not yet, not yet. My attorney filed when we had 14 months of documented evidence, hotel receipts, a private investigator's log that confirmed Marcus, and a woman matching Diane's description at 3 separate locations. Credit card records showing over $27,000 in charges that could not be accounted for by any legitimate expense. $27,000. Some of that was hotel stays. Some of it was a pair of earrings from a boutique in Chapel Hill. Some of it was a weekend in Charleston I was never invited on because he told me it was a client retreat. We filed on a Wednesday morning. The process server reached Marcus at his office at 11:45 that same day. He called me 4 times in the next hour. I let every call go to voicemail. When he came home that evening, he walked in looking like he hadn't breathed properly since 11:45. He said, "Vivienne, we need to talk." He said it quietly, the way someone says it when they already know you know everything. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water. I had chosen the kitchen table deliberately. No couch comfort, no side-by-side softness. Face to face, in the light. He sat down. He started with denial. He said the papers were a shock. He said he didn't understand. And then, when I looked at him without saying a single word, the denial collapsed faster than I expected. He said, Okay, I made a terrible mistake." I let him say it. He said it wasn't serious. He said he didn't know how it happened. He said he was confused, that we'd been struggling with the fertility issues, that he felt helpless, that he didn't know how to tell me. He said her name. He said Diane's name, looking at the table, not at me. I picked up my water glass. I took a sip. And I said, "I know exactly how long it's been going on, Marcus. I know every hotel. I know every charge on your card. And I've known about Diane since February." He stared at me. "You've been telling me I'm the love of your life," I said, while sharing hotel rooms with my sister. "And you want to know what I have to say to you? I have nothing to say to you. My attorney will handle everything from here." I stood up, and I walked out of the kitchen, and I went upstairs, and I closed the bedroom door, and I did not cry. Not that night. I had already done my crying all those months before in the dark while he slept. I had nothing left to spend on him. The divorce proceedings took 8 months. Diane called me 3 times during that period. I answered none of her calls. I have not spoken to her since. I don't know what she expected. Absolution, maybe, or a version of me that would be willing to hear her explain. There is no explanation that would cost me less than my own sanity to hear. The settlement was favorable. Catherine Park was worth every dollar of her retainer. I kept the house. I received a structured payout accounting for the $27,000 in marital funds that were diverted over the course of the affair, plus additional equitable distribution based on my contributions to the household over 9 years, including 14 months of documented fertility treatments, portions of which had been paid from joint funds. I also walked away with a clean financial record, no shared debt, and the dog. Franklin still sleeps at the foot of my bed. He has no idea any of this happened. I find that comforting. As for Marcus, I heard through mutual friends that he and Diane were together for about 4 months after everything came out, and then they separated. I don't know the details. I haven't asked. Whatever happens in that story is theirs to live with, not mine to track. Here is what I know about myself now that I didn't know 9 years ago. I am harder to fool than I look. I am more patient than most people would ever expect. I have a very good nose. And when it tells me something, I listen. I turned 40 last spring. I had a dinner party with 12 people I love. None of them my sister. None of them anyone from the life I had before. We drank really good wine and laughed too loud and stayed until almost midnight. And at the end of the night, I sat alone on my back porch with Franklin's head in my lap and the air smelling like early jasmine. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Just clean, uncomplicated peace. I gave away that perfume, by the way, months before I filed. I donated the bottle, still had about a third left, to a consignment resale shop on Hillsborough Street. I don't know who bought it. I hope it smelled wonderful on her. Some scents you just have to let go of.